A lot of business owners find it really difficult to hire managers. Managers are a different breed. Managers are very different from your regular general virtual assistant. And in this video, I will tell you some of the shortcuts and some of the most successful ways we hire managers in my company, Proximity Outsourcing. Over the years of owning and leading Proximity Outsourcing, my company has placed hundreds of managers. We've hired client success managers, project managers, operations managers, social media managers, and different types of specialists such as video editors, graphic designers, and even more technical roles such as conversion rate optimization specialists and media buyers. In this decade of experience, we've definitely found a few tweaks and a few efficiencies in hiring managers, and I want to share with you some of our best practices in hiring managers. So in this video, I'll share 5. Make sure you have your pen and paper, and most of all, really listen and take into consideration all of the time that's needed to hire a really good manager for your online business. My team takes 50 to 60 hours just to get to the one, and I understand if you as a non-professional could probably take a little bit more time. And of course, if you do get to that point, then definitely give yourself a little bit of grace. So first is, if you look at Google or maybe ChatGPT and you type, what is the difference between a manager and an assistant? You're gonna get a few answers. But then my number one tip would be test for managerial skills. What are the skills that differentiate a manager from an assistant? Some of these skills include leadership skills, efficiency, time management, problem solving. So the way that you look for your manager or your ideal manager is that you look for these traits in their experience, in their past role. And as you're interviewing them and asking questions, focus on certain managerial traits. Of course, depending on the role, it could be different. For example, a project manager may require different specific skills compared to a social media manager. But then again, it is different from hiring just an assistant or a general VA or a general virtual assistant. So you can ask questions about how they manage their time, how they were able to solve a problem, how they were able to make a process more efficient when they were doing this. And you can also test or ask certain questions about the people that they manage. So this is just a general principle and a general way of thinking. Look for managerial traits, look for the managerial roles that they handled in their resume, and the more manager role and manage responsibilities they have in their past life, it means that they have a lot of experience being an actual manager. So it doesn't matter if it's for a small business or a big business, there is a huge difference in the roles if you're a manager versus if you're just an assistant. Number 2 tip is do proctored testing. So what is proctored testing? So when I was in school, there are what we called proctored tests or proctored exams. And these are exams that you take with a teacher present or a professor or a proctor. So we do this in our company as well. So if you have a specific project management software, CRM software, any platform that you require to deliver the tasks, the roles, the oversight as a manager, you should test for this software or platforms as you're watching them do it, as they're sharing their screen. And in fact, if you can even take it a little bit further and for them to even be able to share their thought process, if you give them a particular problem or a particular test task, that would be super awesome as well. In these processes where we have deployed certain proctored tests, it was actually so beautiful to see how these people think, how they prompt AI, because a lot of our hires need to be AI fluent now. And it was even nice to see the mistakes that they made. So it was really good for us to see an insight on how these people think, how they approach certain problems, and how good they try after they fail at something. And of course, it is really good to find out if they actually know how to operate a certain software or a certain platform. Because let me tell you, in the day of AI and a lot of information online, there are a lot of applicants that lie on their resumes. I'm not kidding. We have hired people who claim that they have experience with high-level ClickFunnels, a particular software, even something that's super specialized. They would confidently mention it on their resume, but they don't actually do it. And honestly, we've caught certain people that even got to the last round of interviews and to the final round of hiring, and then we quickly realize that they don't actually know how to operate or use that particular software or platform. So this is really important to do, especially if you're hiring a manager, because there is an expectation of not just operating this certain platform, but with leading people who are using that platform. So of course, as a company, it is encouraged that you provide more resources for them to upskill and develop their skills or develop themselves in that job or develop their knowledge in that platform. Certain platforms also have their own certification programs. So that's awesome. If you could arrange that, that would be great. The next step for you is to really just see how fast they learn and how quick they problem solve. My number 3 tip for hiring managers is test for a growth mindset or a growth trajectory. See, the difference with managers and assistants is that managers are the people that will really drive you to growth. Assistants, the expectation with hiring them is that they're going to be doing tasks. And for managers, the expectation is they're going to be responsible for certain outcomes in your business. And if they manage people and not just tasks or projects, then there is a higher level of expectation on the type of growth that they should also be able to manage. So look for a particular role or certain roles in their resume that exude a growth mindset or that demand a growth mindset. Also take a look if they have a growth trajectory. Look at the past 10 years of the jobs that they had after college. Did they go from assistant to manager? How fast did that happen? You can ask more qualitative and more personal questions based on that journey. If they switched industries, you can also ask more questions about that. You can really dig in and see and ask them to tell you stories that can let you find out if they have a growth mindset or if they are approaching a particular growth trajectory in their lives as well. Because that's the kind of person that you want in your business, and that's the kind of person that you want as a manager in your business, leading and inspiring the other people. Now, number 4, and the next tip for hiring managers, is look for an attitude of proactivity instead of reactivity. So this could come out in certain behavioral questions, in certain situational questions, where you ask them to tell you a story about a problem that they had in the past, or an efficiency issue that they had to fix, or maybe working with a coworker that they didn't like. Another thing is that you can also see in their past role and responsibilities and look at the tasks. And if you can see that there are more proactive than reactive tasks, that is a good sign. It means that these people are used to thinking ahead, anticipating what is needed, and leading a team, and maybe even inspiring a team to deliver more than they are required or that they're asked for. So there is a story that I remember in this issue about like a boy who was working at a golf course, and he was just working there for the summer, and he was just trying to do these little things. So he would just like clean bathrooms, he would clean golf clubs, he would just pick up certain things for certain people. If someone forgot something from their car, he would get it for them. So he just did this like as a summer job. And then after he would do a task, he was very hardworking and he was actually very efficient. After he would do a task, he would go back to his manager, which was actually the owner of this golf course or the pro shop, and he would ask them, hey, I'm done with this, what should I do next? And then they would always give him tasks. So yes, they were pretty impressed with what he was doing, but then there was a time when the owner talked to him and said, hey, Jim, I actually forgot what his name was, but let's call him Jim. He was like, hey, Jim, did you finish this? And he was like, yeah, how about this? Yeah, I finished that. How about that? Yeah, I finished that too. Okay, great, you're fired. And he was just so shocked. He was like, why am I fired? And he was like, well, you're gonna be fired unless you stop asking what you're gonna do next. And then at first, he was confused. He was like, oh my God, I thought I was showing efficiency. I wanted them to see all this work that I'm doing, and I wanted that validation too. And I also want them to know that I'm willing to go beyond my responsibility and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to just keep this job, because I make money on this job. I'm making $4 an hour, but that's a lot of money for a kid. And so he really thought about that, and he was like, why does he want me to stop asking questions? And then he realized the next day he came to work and then he did his job. And then after that, he just didn't ask questions. He just did the next job. He just looked around and looked at certain problems and he just helped out, and he went to the bathrooms and he checked if there are enough toilet papers. And then after that, he went to another place and checked if there's sanitizer here, if, he checked on the customers, if anyone needed anything. And he realized that what he was really tested for was initiative. And then, on the last day of summer, the boss asked him, so are you going to still come back for the next summer? And he said, yeah, I'm going to come back. So after they had that conversation that he was going to get fired if he keeps asking questions, he never asked a question again. He just did the thing. And the owner was very impressed. And he told him, well, if you're coming back for the summer, you're going to be the boss. And he handed him the keys. He handed him a bunch of keys to like the pro shop or the golf course. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm the youngest person in the group. I'm going to be the boss of these people. And he just felt so self-conscious. And then his boss told him, well, you demonstrated the attitude of a boss and a manager, and you had a lot of proactivity and you had a lot of initiative. And no one else here even realized my question or the statement that I gave you. They just kind of kept doing what they were doing. Only you were able to see that. And because of that, I was able to also see within you that you had a certain sense of initiative and proactivity. And so I really love that story, because I look for that too in my managers, in my own company, not just in my online business, but in my physical businesses as well. And even in our own home, me and my husband have a few people that help us take care of our house. And it's now obvious who has leadership capacity and who doesn't have. So it just stands out. But yeah, anyway, so look for proactivity instead of reactivity. And of course, this doesn't mean that if someone is all reactive, maybe this is their first time trying to apply for a manager role, that you will just not consider them. But there's definitely a lot of room to grow, and you also have to see their other potential, and you also have to think about their character and if they have that innate level of proactivity maybe in other areas of their life. So it's up to you to really find out what that means. Every person is different. Every career trajectory is different. And for me, even something as unique as being a single mom of like 5 kids, I feel like that shows a lot of proactivity. And there are definitely other skills that can show up in other parts of someone's life, even if it's not on their resume. And lastly, look for leadership and influence. So I really love this, and I look for this as well, especially because I've always been the leader in my own businesses. I've never had a job. I've had an event planning role and an event planning business where I led different teams, and I literally did concerts with up to 9,000 people. I did conventions, I did road shows. There were days and weeks where I was just flying to a different airport every 2 days, and it was so busy. And also, by the way, I'm an eldest child in my family. And so for me, I feel like my leadership skills were just kind of natural, and I just developed it throughout the years. But for some people, yes, I can see their natural leadership ability, but for other people, I could also see a lot of leadership potential. And leadership doesn't mean that they've had a leadership position in their past role. Yes, that is amazing, and that's always a good sign. But like I said in my earlier point, look for certain traits outside of their resume. And so, for example, if someone says something like, well, in my group of friends, I love throwing potlucks and I'm always the one organizing these potlucks. Or if someone says, I'm the president of our PTA, or I'm the president of our HOA, or in our neighborhood, this little community thing, that's a leadership potential. And this is important because leadership is a matter of influencing people and being able to direct people where they should go and being able to communicate a certain vision. You want that person in your business. You want that person as a manager in your business because you don't want it to be only you who needs to just drive this team all the time and feel like you're the only one who has to motivate them all the time and who has to communicate your vision so that they understand it. And most of all, you don't want to repeat yourself over and over again. You need someone to do it for you. And of course, someone who also believes in this vision and who believes in the work that you do and the problem that you solve for the society or your business, right? So those are some of my tips. My company, once again, has hired hundreds of managers, and these are the 5 main tips or pieces of advice that we share for people who are really looking for good managers for their fast-growing agency or online business. And of course, if all of this seems overwhelming to you, and if you don't want to spend 50 to 60 hours just trying to find the right manager for your business, definitely check us out at proximityoutsourcing.com. And of course, click like and subscribe on this YouTube channel so that you can get my videos and first dibs on all of my secrets in growing an online business through outsourcing.